The 2000s more or less saw the same thing, but there were some tumultuous times. In particular, the album Magnification by Yes. This was the last album to feature John Anderson, and this was the only time they were a four-piece. Igor Khrushchev and Billy Sherwood had left following the Ladder Tour, and to fill in the space of the keyboards, they pulled in an orchestra, and they made a pretty good album. It opens with Magnification, which is, in my opinion, the best song of this album, and it's their best song of the new millennium. Highlights from the Magnification album are opening title track, Give Love Each Day, Spirit of Survival, Dreamtime, and In the Presence of. In 2003, Rick Wakeman returned and they were doing the summer tour circuit. They also did an acoustic show. However, by the end of 2003, they were all on separate tour buses. And so, also John Anderson had an injury, Rick Wakeman departed again, and this was the last time that John Anderson and Rick Wakeman were in the band. In 2001, Opeth released Blackwater Park. This was their first collaboration with Steven Wilson, who had shown interest in the band following their previous album. This was their first foray into progressive death metal. Tracks such as Let the Messiah, Bleak, Harvest, and the title track Showing This. They also released two other albums with Steven Wilson, Deliverance and Damnation. Damnation is their first foray into straight progressive rock.
Blank face in the window pane, made clear in seconds of light, disappears and returns again, counting hours, searching the night.
It opens with Window Pane, which is their best song in my opinion. It goes through multiple sections and uses some beautiful chords, including upper chord extensions as seen in jazz music. Dream Theater released 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence.
He seemed no different from the rest, just a healthy, normal boy. His mama always did her best, and he was daddy's pride and joy. He learned to walk and talk on time, but never cared much to be held. Insteadly he would decline into his solitary shell.
It begins with the same sound effects seen in Metropolis Part 2. It shows Mike Portnoy's keen interest in progressing forward, as it includes the first part of the 12-step suite, which is in regards to his alcohol abuse and addiction. He would cover this on their next few albums, before leaving in 2009. 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence also includes the 42-minute song, the title track, split into 7 sections, and is an interesting listen. I like it, but I haven't listened to it again since listening to it for the first time. In my opinion, it pales in comparison to the progressive rock suites of old. In 2003, they released Train of a heavier album, which includes the track In the Name of God, which ends the album. In 2004, they released Octavarium, which is one of their proggiest albums. It opens with the third movement of the 12-step suite, and it closes with their 24-minute song Octavarium, with various references to other songs. In particular, Shine On You Crazy Diamond in its opening sequence, as it attempts to emulate the atmosphere of the opening minutes of that song. There's also lyrical references to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Careful with That Axe Eugene, Supper's Ready, and many other progressive rock songs. In 2007, they released Systematic Chaos, which also features a 24-minute song, although it is split into 2 parts to bookend the album in order to make sure they don't end 2 albums in a row with 20-plus minute songs. It includes the 4th movement of the 12-step suite. And then Black Clouds and Silver Linings ends Mike Portnoy's time with Dream Theater and their true prog nature. So much so, their next album was called A Dramatic Turn of Events. Subtle. The band Wobbler attempted to capture the magic that was 70s progressive rock with their album Hinterland, released in 2005. The 27-minute title track is a beautiful example of how to write a song in the style of 70s prog, but without trying to pale in imitation. Wobbler continued to this day, and I will touch on some of their albums later on. The band Muse also saw their proliest days in the 2000s. In particular, the run of albums of Origin of Symmetry, Absolution, Black Holes and Revelations, and The Resistance. Origin of Symmetry includes songs like Citizen Erased, Hypermusic, Plug-in Baby, Newborn, and other progressive rock songs. However, this does show they're leaning into alternative rock, which they were famed for. Absolution Please, Hysteria, Sing for Absolution, Stockholm Syndrome, and Time is Running Out. This leans further into the alt rock, but still has some progressive elements. Black Holes and Revelations albums, with songs like Starlight and Supermassive Black Hole cementing them as alt-rock giants. However, songs like Take a Bow show off their bombast, and Knights of Sidonia is their progressive rock triumph, going through multiple keys, tempos, and styles, incorporating elements of Western and science fiction. It also has a great riff to end the album on. The Resistance features the song Exogenesis Symphony, split into 3 movements, including heavy influence from classical music. The final thing I'd like to talk about for the 2000s is Live 8. As a significant reunion happened with that year, in 2005. Pink Floyd played live again with the classic lineup of David Gilmour, Richard Wright, Nick Mason, and Roger Waters. They played 4 songs. They played Breathe, Money, Wish You Were Here, and Comfortably Numb. This is the last time that the classic lineup of Pink Floyd would ever be able to play together, as Richard Wright died in 2008. In the 2010s, not much changed from the 2000s. There was progressive metal, and then there was progressive rock that was rehashing the glory days in the 1970s. Let's start with Yes. Due to John Anderson falling ill, the rest of the band got bored of waiting, and so they hired the singer Benoit Davis and Oliver Wakeman to fill out the rest of the band. Benoit Davis is a Canadian singer who was in the band Close to the Edge, a Yes tribute act. And Oliver Wakeman was the son of Rick Wakeman. This lineup played live and recorded an album called Fly From Here.
Every day that you wait is one more that you've lost. When you wake up, I see you there on display, like some final point of no return.
The album fared pretty well. It opened with a 24-minute title track split into a few parts. It was also produced by Trevor Horn, and in 2018 it would be re-recorded with Trevor Horn on vocals and Jeff Downes on keyboards, making it the second album recorded by the Drama lineup. However, before then, in 2014, they would release another album, Heaven and Earth. Without Benoit Davis, though. Instead, singer John Davison would be brought in, and he would be in the band until to this day. Heaven and Earth is an alright album. It is one of the worst in the Yes discography. However, Living in a World of Our Own is commendable in some respects. In 2016, Chris Squire passed away of cancer. This was a tragic day for the Yes fandom, as he was the only original member left in the band. In 2017, they reunited to play the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as they got inducted. They played Roundabout and Owner of a Lonely Heart. As Alan White grew older, Jay Shellen was brought on to fill out some live work and some studio work. I will get to that in a bit. Following the passing of Richard Wright, Pink Floyd decided to record an album in memory of him, using older recordings from the Division Bell sessions, making an almost entirely instrumental album, aside from the closing track and lead single, Louder Than Words.
It's louder than words, this thing that we do. Louder than words, the way it unfurls.
Wobbler released their landmark album From Silence to Somewhere in 2017. Steven Wilson released his finest work as a soloist with The Raven That Refused to Sing and Other Stories.
The holy drinker and his curse, in constant surfeit to an unquenchable thirst.
tracks, and each track is magnificent. It opens with Luminol, and other highlights are The Watchmaker, Drive Home, and the title track. The Raven That Refused to Sing features this beautiful chord progression. The sound of The Raven That Refused to Sing is derived from many classic prog acts. This is because of the tasks that Steven Wilson was undergoing as a producer. In 2009, King Crimson commissioned him to remaster In the Court of the Crimson King and do a 5.1 surround sound mix, as Robert Fripp and the band thought this would be an interesting place to take the music. After the success, he continued doing King Crimson albums, was also commissioned for remastering and doing surround sound mixes of albums reaching landmark anniversaries. Examples of his remixes include a 2011 mix of Tarkus, remixing all the Yes albums from the debut to Big Generator, remastering all the King Crimson albums, Gentle Giant, some Genesis, and a couple others here and there. He also has done some classic rock albums like Who's Next, most recently. The 2020s have shown some exciting new steps for the world of progressive rock. In 2021, Yes released The Quest, and it is an all-right album, in particular the song The Ice Bridge, which shows a newfound energy in the band. Yes drummer Alan White would pass away in 2022, and he would be replaced by Jerry Sherman as per his wishes. In May this year, Yes released Mirror to the Sky. Which is a bold step forward and an exciting album, featuring songs like Cut from the Stars with its incredible bass line plus vocal harmonies, Luminosity, All Connected, Mirror to the Sky, and Circles of Time, making an incredible album. Steven Wilson released The Future Bites, which was in a more pop direction, and earlier this year released The Harmony Codex. with incredible mixes and great songwriting, the best of which being Impossible Tightrope. Jethro Tull made a comeback in the 2020s. They officially disbanded in 2017 with no intention of using the Jethro Tull name again, with Martin Barr fully embarking as a soloist with his new band, Martin Barr's New Day. However, in 2022 they released a single, Shoshana's Sleeping, and then the album, The Zealot Zine. It is an interesting album, however Ian's voice has not aged well. They released another album earlier this year, Rock Float.
Was there a time when I was Jupiter?
Which was, again, suffering from Ian's vocals. Now, I wanted to put a dedicated section to this band, given how ludicrous their discography is. So, a brief word about King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. They started out as a garage rock based band, releasing their debut album 12 Bar Brews in 2012. They released their cult western audiobook Eyes Like the Sky in 2013. Also in 2013, they released their psychedelic rock masterpiece Float Along, Fill Your Lungs. Of oddments, titled Oddments, in 2014, and I Am in Your Mind Fuzz in 2014. Both released in 2015, Quarters incorporating a jazz rock style with progressive rock leanings. Nonagon Infinity was released in 2016 and was the first time since 2012 that they released only one.
Again, infinity opens the door. Not again, infinity opens the door. Wait for the answer to open the door. Not again, infinity opens the door.
And was the first time since 2012 that they released only one album in a year. It follows the idea of an infinite concert. A quite progressive idea, if you ask me. In 2017, they released 5 albums: Flying Microtonal Banana, Murder of the Universe, Sketches of Brunswick East, Polygon de Wonderland, and Gumboot Super. Sketches of Brunswick East is a jazz album, and Polygon de Wonderland is straight up progressive rock. Flying Microtonal Banana involves their first experiments with microtonal music, another pretty progressive side quest, if you ask me.
Rattlesnake, 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 rattlesnake.
Fishing for Fishies and Infest the Rat's Nest in 2019 after their 2018 break. They released their first half of the KGLW double album in 2020, KG, which was their second microtonal exploration, and LW in 2021, which was their most recent microtonal exploration. They released the pop Butterfly 3000 in 2021, and then in 2022 they released 5 albums. They released Made in Timeland and Omnium Gatherum early on in the year, and then in October they released 3 albums: Ice, Death, Planets, Lungs, Mushrooms and Lava. A jam-focused album with progressive rock leanings, particularly on the song Iron Lung, which is a live favourite. They released Laminated Denim, which is a 30-minute album with 2 15-minute songs. And then they released Changes with its 14-minute title track, including multiple key changes. Earlier this year, they released Petrodragonic Apocalypse, or Dawn of Eternal Night, an alienation of planet Earth and the beginning of the merciless damnation, which is a progressive metal album. In a couple days, as in later this week as I'm recording this, they are releasing The Silver Chord, which is an electronic album. King Gizzard is a band that refuses to stick to one genre, and that makes them a progressive rock band in my eyes. So, that was the history of progressive rock. Now, let's have a look at some of the artists that really changed the genre and the impacts they had. First up is my favourite band in the whole world, Yes. Their classic run of 70s albums, from the Yes album up till Going for the One, is something that is unmatched by anyone in my eyes. Everything from the musicality, the musicianship and the production shows bold new steps forward, fronted by producer Eddie Offord, who is practically the 6th member of the band in every instance. They brought in elements of alternate genres like jazz fusion in Relay, and they brought in spiritualism in Tales from Topographic Oceans. They showed complexity but still being able to write great hooks in Close to the Edge. And they showed they could still rock out hard with Going for the One. With 90125, they paved a new way for production, with the new sound of the 80s, dominated by synthesizers and sampling, and they were the forefront of it all, armed with the producer Trevor Horn. Today they are paving the way still with creative phrases and bass playing, and with just great talent throughout. Pink Floyd is known as prog through their concepts and lyrics, fronted by Roger Waters. The run of albums from Metal to Animals is unparalleled, and this is including the overlooked Obscured by Clouds, although I skipped it over because it's quite inconsequential overall. But the concept of Dark Side of the Moon and the lyrics, Say We Wish You Were Here and Animals, are something that showed what rock operas should be, taking influence from The Who impacted prog in a way nobody could have expected. King Crimson pioneered metal. With 21st century Schizoid Man, it was complex, but loud, just so loud. And then with the lineup of Bill Bruford, John Wetton, Robert Fripp and David Cross, they produced some of the heaviest music that any progressive rock bands had ever made. At a time when Black Sabbath and Deep Purple were fronting the metal movement, King Crimson were quietly often the prog genre, influencing many bands to come. The drumming of Barrymore Barlow and Jethro Tull definitely influenced some metal acts in the 80s. You can hear influences from Minstrel in the Gallery in albums by Iron Maiden and Metallica. Jethro Tull's fusing of folk with hard rock elements is unprecedented and shouldn't work, yet does so well. And their same thing with fusing the electronic synthesizers with the electric guitar of Martin Barr in the 80s still blows people away. Genesis, with its English charm and incredible complexity in the music, showed that England were not falling behind in the music scene that had been dominated by the Americans in the 50s. Frank Zappa, in his weird and wonderful ways, managed to capture a spirit that nobody else could. He was releasing 3 albums in a year. He was releasing triple albums, double albums. He was creating concept albums. He was running a band at the same time. He was an insane talent, and so sad that he was lost in the 90s. Can't help but imagine what he would have done if he had lived on. Rush bought the hard rock of Led Zeppelin and fused it with the prog of Yes, and managed to make something incredibly special and show that prog could be successful in the 80s. Some bands and artists that dabbled in prog as well. Elton John's album Madman Across the Water includes the song Madman Across the Water and Indian Sunset, both of which include unique structures and moods which definitely count in prog. Future Games by Fleetwood Mac includes the track Woman of 1,000 Years and the title track, which are both expansive and progressive. Scenes from an Italian Restaurant by Billy Joel is one of his most popular compositions, moving through multiple movements and keys, and it's just progressive rock. The Who's Quadrophenia, with its overarching themes being played throughout the entire album, and its high level of musicianship, like the bass line on The Real Me. I'm not playing it, I haven't learnt it. It is something to behold what The Who were doing in 1973. In the 80s, Iron Maiden were creating prog epics like Rime of the Ancient Mariner. Whilst being relatively simple in structure, their epic nature brought into the fold the progressive rock of the 80s. The same with Metallica. Master of Puppets is a thrash metal masterpiece, but the title track involves multiple movements and tempos, and as well as other songs on the album doing the same. Their album And Justice for All, whilst having some less than stellar production, also shows their knack for writing long songs that can somewhat maintain your attention. Paul McCartney dabbled in prog. On the album Band for the Run, the title track goes through multiple movements before reaching its main section, and even then, the main section never quite stays the same, with different lengths of choruses and some slightly different chord progressions. Electric Light Orchestra, with albums like El Dorado and On the Third Day and Out of the Blue, showed production in a new way in the 70s, fronted by Jeff Lynne, and fusing classical with rock. What could be more progressive rock than that? Radiohead. Their album OK Computer had the song Paranoid Android, a multi-part song which has bits in 7/8, and also Kid A. A band just doing something completely left field like that is most definitely prog. There are many other bands that have dabbled in prog before, but that pretty much sums up how many major artists that are known for completely different things really took influence from the genre, and how impactful to music as a whole progressive rock was. But progressive rock is sort of in a crisis. The most recent Dream Theater album is underwhelming, according to a Dream Theater fan I know. And prog seems to be in the crisis of its imitation of the 70s, but not really pushing new ground. So, that is the history of progressive rock and the impact that progressive rock has to music as we know it.